Grandma Barbara, you never sacrificed for us like Grandma Sharon did. Chloe's words hung in the dining room air, a heavy cloud. My heart seized as an awkward silence descended upon our Sunday dinner. My son, Jason, feigned deafness, his gaze fixed on the roast chicken as if it held the secrets of the universe. My daughter-in-law, Stephanie, offered a weak, embarrassed smile. I swallowed hard, drew a breath. My hands trembled slightly as I served more rice onto my youngest grandson, Leo's plate. "More salad, anyone?" I asked, as if nothing had happened. But inside, something shattered. 67 years of life and no words had ever struck me with such force. Chloe, 19, didn't even glance up from her phone. To her, it was a throwaway line. To me, it felt like my very essence had been ripped out and cast aside. I kept serving, smiling, asking about college, about work. I did what I always did, attended to them in silence. When I got home that afternoon, my empty apartment seemed colder than ever. I sank into my favorite armchair, the one I bought after selling my mother's heirloom pearls, the very pearls I'd saved for special occasions. Yet they'd covered 6 months' rent when Jason lost his job 15 years ago, with Chloe barely a newborn and her little brother on the way. You must wonder how we arrived at this point. How a grandmother who'd given everything could hear from her own granddaughter that she'd never sacrificed. It began when Chloe was just a few months old. I remember it vividly. The doorbell chimed on a rainy Tuesday. I opened it to find Jason drenched, his eyes red-rimmed, clutching a crumpled envelope. "Mom, I got laid off." My only son stood there, head bowed, the termination letter a damning testament in his hand. Stephanie was home with a 3-month-old and another on the way. Bills piled. Desperation was etched into his face. "Come in, son. We'll figure this out." That same night, while Jason slept in the guest room, I opened the red velvet box where I kept my mother's jewelry. A string of real pearls, small diamond earrings, a gold bracelet. They were the only valuables I owned. Richard, my husband, had passed 2 years prior, leaving only a meager pension. The next day, I visited the downtown jeweler. The man with glasses examined each piece carefully. "Are you sure, ma'am? These are antique, good quality." "I am," I replied without hesitation. I left with enough to cover 6 months of their apartment rent, their overdue bills, and the health insurance about to lapse. When I handed the envelope to Jason, he wept like a child. "How will I ever pay you back, Mom?" "It's not a loan, son. It's a gift." I never mentioned the jewelry. Never revealed it was my mother's sole inheritance. After all, what mother would ever hold a gift over her child's head? In the months that followed, while Jason searched for work, I cared for little Chloe so Stephanie could keep her job. I'd wake at 5 a.m., take 2 buses to their house across town. I spent my days changing diapers, feeding bottles, singing the baby to sleep. I'd come home exhausted, with back pains that cling to me still. When Leo was born 3 months later, the routine grew heavier. 2 babies, Stephanie working full-time, Jason taking odd jobs while seeking stability. I was 52, my knees already protesting. But it was my role, I thought. That's what family is for. Around that time, my blood pressure began to climb. The doctor advised rest, a salt-free diet, less exertion. I tucked the prescription into a drawer and kept rising at 5 a.m. How could I rest if my son needed me? One morning, bathing Leo, a sharp pain pierced my chest. I sank to the bathroom floor, struggling for breath, the baby crying in my lap. When Stephanie arrived home, I was feeling better and said nothing. It was the first tremor of what would later be diagnosed as a heart condition. I hid the symptoms for months, taking my medicine in secret, unwilling to worry them. They had enough burdens. When Jason finally found stable employment, I thought I could rest. But life had other plans. His salary barely covered their expenses, and I remained their financial lifeline. One month it was school supplies, the next a broken refrigerator, then the car repair Jason needed for work. The children grew up seeing me as part of the furniture. The grandma always available who cooked Sunday lunch, who nursed them when they were sick so their parents wouldn't miss work. Chloe, with her bright wit, quickly became the darling of the other grandma, Stephanie's mother, Grandma Sharon. A retired teacher, Grandma Sharon was financially comfortable. She took her granddaughter to the mall, bought brand-name clothes, paid for English lessons and swimming. I was happy Chloe had opportunities I couldn't provide. When Chloe was 12, she needed braces, an expensive treatment, not covered by insurance. Jason was deep in debt again. Without a word to anyone, I used the savings I'd kept for a long-planned cruise to Alaska, a dream of mine since Richard died. The money went to my granddaughter's smile, and Alaska remained a distant dream. A week after Chloe's comment at lunch, she called, invited me for coffee. We met at a cafe near her business administration college. "Grandma, you won't believe it. Grandma Sharon is taking me to Disney World for the holidays. Isn't that amazing?" I smiled, holding her hand across the table. "How wonderful, honey. You deserve it." Chloe spoke animatedly about her plans, her friends, how her maternal grandma was so cool and so generous. "Grandma, why don't you ever travel? Mom's mom has been to Paris, New York." I took a sip of my coffee, weighing my answer. How to explain that the money meant for my comfortable retirement had ensured she had diapers, formula, and a roof over her head as a baby? How to say my dream trip savings had turned into her orthodontic treatment? "I never really caught the travel bug, honey," I answered simply. She continued talking about her trip, about college, her new boyfriend. Not once did she ask how I was, if I needed anything, if my heart still ached on cold nights. 3 days later, I found an old photo album while tidying my closet. Pictures of baby Chloe in my lap. Me with deep, dark circles under my eyes, yet smiling. One photo caught my attention. Me sitting in the hospital, holding her tiny hand, while Stephanie rested after emergency surgery. I stayed there 3 nights straight, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair, ignoring the pains in my legs. I remembered one particular night. Chloe, burning with fever, cried endlessly. Stephanie, exhausted from work, slept soundly. Jason was on a business trip. I spent the entire night with the little girl in my arms, singing softly, placing cold compresses on her small forehead, praying the fever would break. When the sun rose, Chloe finally slept in my arms, her fever slowly receding. I hadn't slept a minute. I closed the album with a heavy sigh. I never expected recognition for my sacrifices. I did them out of love, not obligation. But hearing that I never sacrificed hurt more than all the sleepless nights, more than the chest pains, more than the pearls sold. That night, I made a decision. Not out of anger or resentment, but out of self-love. Something I'd neglected for so long. I picked up the phone and called my friend Linda. "Remember that bus tour to Branson you invited me on? Is the offer still on the table?" Linda, a widow like me, had invited me for years on little trips I always refused, either because I was busy with family or short on money. "Of course, Barbara. We're leaving next week. Are you really coming?" I am, I replied with a certainty I hadn't felt in years. It's time to live a little. The following week, when Jason called asking me to water their plants during a weekend trip, I answered calmly, "Son, I won't be able to. I'll be traveling with Linda." The silence on the other end was telling. In 15 years, it was the first time I'd said no. "But Mom, it's just watering plants. You never travel." "Well, son, it's time I started." I hung up with a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't pain, it was freedom. For the first time in years, I was prioritizing myself. I didn't tell him about the sold pearls, about the nights in the hospital, about the heart medication taken in silence. Some sacrifices are made without fanfare, not for recognition, but out of love. Yet I learned belatedly that self-love is important too. Yesterday, I received a message from Chloe. "Grandma, heard you're traveling. So cool. Bring me a souvenir?" I smiled at my phone. "I will, honey. And maybe one day when you're a mother, you'll understand that the greatest sacrifices are those we make in silence, expecting nothing in return. But until then, I'm going to learn to live a little more for myself." As I pack my suitcase for my first trip in decades, I look at Richard's photo on the nightstand. "I'm off to see new places, my dear. Finally. I don't know what Branson holds for me, nor what will happen when I return. I just know, at 67, I'm finally starting to understand that taking care of others doesn't mean erasing yourself. That love isn't a synonym for constant sacrifice. And that sometimes, people only truly value what they've lost. But that's a story for another day. Right now, I've got a suitcase to finish packing and a life to start living." The next week when I called to check in, Stephanie answered. And the way she spoke to me. "Barbara, glad you called. Jason was just about to try and reach you." There it was, just Barbara. Not Mom or Grandma Barbara. Just Barbara, like I was simply an acquaintance. Or perhaps she was subtly annoyed I hadn't been around for the usual routine. Before I could even respond, I heard my son's voice in the background, asking for the phone. "Mom?" Jason's voice sounded strangely formal. "How was the trip?" "It was wonderful, son," I replied, feeling genuine joy recalling those days at the spa. The hot springs did wonders for my back. You wouldn't believe how refreshed I felt. "That's good," he said, but I could hear the hesitation. "Mom, we were thinking. Leo's birthday is next Saturday. Could you make that chocolate cake he loves so much?" There it was. Not even a week after my first real vacation in years, and they expected me back in my usual routine. Make the cake, tidy the house, probably manage everything while they greeted guests. I took a deep breath before answering. "Son, I'm going to be honest with you. I have a cardiologist appointment scheduled for Saturday morning. I can pick up a cake from the bakery down the street. They make wonderful ones." Silence on the other end. I could almost see the surprise on his face. "Cardiologist? Are you sick?" The concern in his voice was genuine, softening my heart a little, but not enough to back down. "Nothing serious, son. Just a checkup I've been having for a few years now." "Years? And why have you never told us?" I closed my eyes, remembering all the times I'd taken medicine in secret, all the pains I'd hidden so as not to worry them. "I didn't want to bother you. You always had so much on your plates." 3 days later, I was tending to my small patio garden when the doorbell rang. To my surprise, it was Chloe. "Grandma!" She hugged me tight, something she hadn't done in ages. "I brought you a present." She handed me a colorful paper bag. Inside was a book. Unforgettable Trips to Take After 60. I thought it was just so you, she said, smiling. And I came to show you the photos of your trip that Linda posted on Facebook. We sat on the sofa while she showed me the pictures on her phone. Me in the spa pools, smiling like I hadn't in a long time. Linda and me eating ice cream like two teenagers. Me admiring the sunset, with a serene expression I barely recognized. "Grandma, you look so happy in these pictures," Chloe commented, looking at me with curiosity. "Why haven't you ever traveled before?" The moment had arrived. Not to throw everything I'd done in her face, but to share a bit of my story, so she could understand that sacrifices aren't always visible. "Chloe, do you remember when you were little and your dad lost his job?" She frowned, trying to remember. "Sort of. I was really little. You had just been born, and your mom was pregnant with Leo." I opened the table drawer and pulled out an old photo. Jason holding baby Chloe at the door of an apartment. "This was your first apartment after you moved out of that rented house. Your dad had lost his job, and the bills were piling up. And what happened?" I took a deep breath. "My mother, your great-grandma, left me some jewelry when she passed away. A pearl necklace that belonged to her mother. Diamond earrings my father gave her for their 25th wedding anniversary. A gold bracelet." Chloe's eyes widened. "And where are those pieces, Grandma?" "I sold all of them. I paid 6 months of your apartment rent, all the overdue bills, the health insurance that was about to expire." Chloe was silent, processing the information. "Why did you never tell us that?" "What kind of mother would hold that over her child?" I replied simply. I got up and grabbed the photo album I'd found days before. I showed her the picture in the hospital. "Remember this photo?" She looked carefully. "Is that me as a baby?" "Yes. Your mom needed emergency surgery when you were a year and a half old. I stayed 3 nights straight in that hospital, sleeping in that uncomfortable chair, holding your tiny hand while your mom recovered." I turned the page of the album. "And here, when you had chickenpox and your brother caught it right after. I spent 2 weeks at your house, caring for you day and night." I continued showing photos, telling stories. Not with bitterness, but so she would understand that love manifests in many forms. "Grandma, I didn't know any of this." "Of course not, sweetheart. You were too little. And later, when you grew up, those things were already in the past." I closed the album and looked into her eyes. "When you turned 12 and needed braces, do you remember how worried your dad was about the cost?" She nodded. "I remember he suddenly said everything worked out, that he'd gotten the money. I had saved for years to visit Europe. It was a dream of mine and your grandfather's, but I used all that money to pay for your treatment." Tears began to form in Chloe's eyes. "Grandma, I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad, dear. I just want you to understand that sacrifices aren't always visible. Sometimes they're hidden in the choices we make, in the priorities we set." She took my hands in hers, her eyes wet. "On Sunday, when I said you never sacrificed for us like Grandma Sharon did, it hurt," I admitted. "It hurt because I spent my whole life putting you all first, often forgetting about myself. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I was so unfair. You didn't know, Chloe. How could you know about things I never told you?" That night, after Chloe left, I thought about our conversation. I don't regret any sacrifice I made for my family. But I realized that by hiding everything, I also deprived my grandchildren of knowing an important part of my story, of their history. The next day, I received a message from Jason. "Mom, can we talk? Chloe told me some things and, well, I think we have a lot to talk about." We arranged to meet for coffee that afternoon. When I arrived at the cafe, Jason was already there, looking nervous, stirring his coffee without actually drinking it. "Hi, son," I said, sitting across from him. "Mom," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "Chloe told me about great-grandma's jewelry, about the money for her braces, about... so much I never knew." I shrugged. "Those things happened a long time ago. Why didn't you ever tell me? About your heart? About the sacrifices? Son, do you think a mother should charge for the love she gives?" He shook his head. "It's not about charging, Mom. It's about sharing. About letting us give back. About allowing us to take care of you, too." That caught me by surprise. I had never thought of it that way. "You know," I continued, "when your father died, I promised myself I'd do everything so that you and your family would never go without. That I'd always be present, always available. And you were, Mom. Always. But in the process, I forgot about myself. I forgot I also have the right to live, to take care of my health, to realize small dreams." Jason held my hand across the table. "Mom, I want you to know you can count on me. You don't have to hide when you're not well, when you need help." I smiled, feeling a lump in my throat. "Thank you, son." "And about Leo's birthday, forget the cake. We'll order one. I want you to come just as a guest, to enjoy yourself." I laughed, wiping away a stubborn tear. "Well, that'll be a first." Leo's 15th birthday party was different from all the previous family gatherings. For the first time, I arrived only at the scheduled time, without having spent the whole day cooking and tidying. I just brought a gift, a video game he really wanted, which I bought with the money I was saving again for a trip. To my surprise, there was a special cake just for me, with a single candle. "What is this?" I asked, confused. Chloe approached, smiling. "It's to celebrate your rebirth, Grandma, to celebrate this new phase of your life." I looked around and saw the smiling faces of my family. Jason, Stephanie, Leo, Chloe. Even Grandma Sharon was there, smiling gently at me. "Barbara," she said, coming closer. "Chloe told me about everything you've done for them over the years. I want you to know, I admire you very much." I was speechless. I never imagined hearing that from the other grandma, the one who always seemed to do everything better than me. "Thank you, Sharon. That means a lot to me." Chloe took an envelope from the table and handed it to me. "Grandma, this is our present for you." I opened it carefully. Inside was a plane ticket to the Florida coast and a hotel reservation. "What?" "To fulfill a dream you postponed for our sake," Jason explained. "Linda already confirmed she can go with you." Tears came without me being able to hold them back. "But how did you—" "Everyone contributed a little," Stephanie said. "Even Leo used part of his allowance that he'd saved." I looked at my youngest grandchild, who smiled shyly. "Grandma, you deserve it," he said simply. In that moment, I understood that my sacrifices hadn't been in vain. Not because they were finally being recognized or rewarded, but because they had helped shape people capable of empathy, of gratitude, of love. "Thank you," was all I could manage, my voice thick with emotion. Later, As the party wound down, Chloe sat beside me on the couch. Grandma, remember when we met at the coffee shop and I showed you that travel book? I do, sweetheart. Of course. There's something I didn't tell you that day. She paused. When I saw those photos of you from that resort trip, I noticed something I never had before. What was it? That I'd never seen you truly happy. In our family photos, you're always smiling, but it's different. In those travel pictures, your eyes just sparkled. That's when I realized how much you'd given up your own happiness for us. I sat in silence, just taking in her words. You know, Grandma, she continued, when I said you'd never sacrificed for us, I was thinking about material things. The trips Grandma Sharon gave me, the expensive presents. But now I understand there are much bigger sacrifices that can't be measured in money. I pulled my granddaughter into a hug, feeling a boundless love. The important thing is, we're all learning, together, I said. I'm learning to think more about myself, and you all are learning to see beyond the obvious. 2 months later, I was on the Florida coast, my feet in the sand, my gaze lost on the horizon. Linda was snapping photos of everything, as excited as a kid. Barbara, are you okay? She asked, noticing my quietness. I'm great, I answered sincerely, just thinking about how life comes full circle. I pulled out the photo of Richard I always carried with me. We did it, my dear. I'm seeing the ocean you talk so much about. The gentle wind caressed my face like his touch. I closed my eyes, feeling the peace I'd searched for so long. That night, I video called Chloe to show her the sunset. It's beautiful, Grandma, she exclaimed. Are you enjoying the trip? I'm loving it, honey. Thank you for being a part of this. Grandma, I have big news. I got a paid internship at the university. That's wonderful, Chloe. I'm so proud of you. And you know what I'm gonna do with my first paycheck? I'm gonna start saving up to take you to see the Pacific Northwest. People say it's stunning in the winter. I smiled, my eyes welling up. You don't have to do that, sweetheart. I want to, Grandma. I want to give you experiences, not just things. I want you to live everything you put off because of us. After we hung up, I sat looking at the stars from the hotel balcony. I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made, the good jewelry I'd sold, the sleepless nights, the hidden heartaches. And for the first time, I didn't feel sadness or regret. Because now I understand that true sacrifice isn't about giving something up, but doing it without resentment, without keeping score. Genuine love doesn't demand recognition, but when it comes, it brings a special kind of sweetness. At 67, I'm learning that taking care of others and taking care of myself aren't mutually exclusive. That I can be a grandmother, a mother, and still be Barbara, the woman who loves hot springs, who finally saw the ocean, who still has dreams to fulfill. And when Chloe has her own children, I won't tell her about the sacrifices she'll make. She'll discover them herself. But I'll be there to remind her that the greatest act of love we can teach is balance. Giving without erasing yourself. Loving without losing who you are. Because true sacrifices are those made in silence. Not out of martyrdom, but by choice. And the choices we make, however painful, transform us into the people we're meant to be. Today, looking at the ocean Richard loved so much, I finally understand that my story isn't about unrecognized sacrifices. It's about love. The love I gave, the love I received, and the love I finally learned to give myself. And that, in the end, is what truly matters.